like to open the public meeting at 5:30. Could we have a roll call, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Actually, it's 5:35, sorry.
5:35. Kathy Patnode, Luke Murray,
Here.
Donna Colonian,
Yeah.
James Pearson,
Here.
Craig Levis.
Here.
That's it.
All right, is there a motion to recess into executive session?
I make a motion to recess into executive session at
I second the motion.
5:35.
I second the motion.
All right, roll call, please.
Kathy Patnode,
Yes,
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colonian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
all right, we'll see you on the other meeting.
Okay.
Could we have a moment of silence as we consider the work before us this evening? Okay, thank you. Mr. Florio, I believe it's your turn to read the mission statement for Coventry Public Schools.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The mission statement of the Coventry Public Schools is to inspire, support, and challenge all students in an exclusive community to be critical thinkers, effective communicators, reflective learners, responsible individuals, and global citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Florio. And just to let the public know, the school committee met in executive session for about 20 minutes or so, where we discussed potential litigation, and we approved the executive session minutes of 3/12/2020. One vote was taken on those minutes, and it was approved 4-0. That being said, is the motion to seal the minutes of the executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to seal the records of the executive session and that they be kept pursuant to sections 42-46-4 and 42-46-5.
Is there a second on that? Oh, someone needs to unmute Mrs. Colunian, I think. Okay.
I second the motion.
Done.
Thank you, Donna. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray. Luke, you're muted.
Yeah, no, he needs to be unmuted by the host.
There we
Oh,
go.
Okay.
I need to have open access. Yes.
Okay. Donna Colonian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes. Am I
Thank
also
you.
muted? No, good.
You're unmuted now. Okay, thank you. I guess we can move on to agenda item number 5, which are the recalls. Is there Mr. Levis, did you want to speak to these, or should we just move? I think
All right.
Mr. Levis.
Thank you. No, I was muted.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to point out that there was a job fair on Tuesday, I believe. And I want to remind the school committee that we had 11 retirees, and we're recalling, I believe, 14 individuals tonight, but 8 of those individuals are not being recalled to full-time positions. And one of the positions, we'll talk about it later on tonight, state pre-K, and we're expecting significant funding, but hopefully one of those positions will be funded by the state pre-K grant award. So while we're bringing back 14 individuals, 8 of them are significantly less than full-time. And the others, based on the job fair and openings that were left. So, the 14, I believe 6 of them are full-time positions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Levis. Is there a motion to approve the recall?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to affirm the recommendation of the superintendent. Recall the following 14 staff as listed in the recall list of 2020-2021 school year.
I second the motion.
Just a question, do we need to read the list or are we fine?
No,
Mr.
we, yeah, I think we can read the list when we make the motion. I think the motion is just to every individual, but I believe we can read the list.
Okay,
Okay, Mr. Levis. I have it right here. Okay, all recalled positions on 6/11/2020 for effective school year 2020-2021. Norman Rosenfeld, regular .6 music band, Coventry High School. Molly O'Keefe, regular .5 social studies, Coventry High School. Cynthia Texera, regular .4 French, Coventry High School. Lisa Clift, regular .4 educational studies, regular CNT.
Regional.
Regional CNT, career and tech. Thank you. Lee Borelli, regular 1.0, intent to support bridge program, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Christopher Costa, regular 1.0, social studies enrichment, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Benjamin Streeter, regular 1.0, world language, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Jamie Sheridan, regular 1.0, science grades 6 and 7, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Sabrina Pimento Makut, regular 1.0, English, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Brittany Carbone, regular .6, math, grade 6, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Caitlin Valletta, regular .3, inclusion, Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School. Wendy Unknown, regular .4, inclusion, Cuyahoga Elementary School. Lindsay Harrington, let's get this down here. Okay. Lindsay Harrington. Okay. Lindsay Harrington, regular .6, Hopkins Hill Elementary School. Kayla Varelli, regular .1.0, pre-kindergarten special education teacher, pending grant funding and/or will be called regular .10, early childhood special education integrated pre-kindergarten teacher, Washington Oak.
Okay, was there a second on that?
I second.
Thank you.
No, wait. Oh, okay.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray. Okay, Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
James is muted.
Can you wave, James?
No.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Can you just, whoever is running the meeting, can you give us, the committee members, the ability to unmute themselves? Because we can't, for some reason, James and I are having issues.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, I'm
because
looking at that right
I
now.
can mute myself again after. It's
I'm
not-
looking at it right now.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so we can move on to one termination that we have. Mr. Levis, did you want to respond to this or not?
No, I just want to say that typically this is something that will be handled through the superintendent's office, but because this employee was notified that it was going before the school committee, we're bringing it before the school committee. But for SRP employees, this won't have to go through the school committee per their contract.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Levis. Is there a motion to approve the classified termination?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the termination of Toby Aguaduni, 4-hour/day supervisory yard aide at Washington Oak Elementary School, effective May 21st, 2020, after an unsuccessful probationary period.
Second the motion.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to approval of minutes. They were reference number 2. There were several, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings worth of open meetings. I don't know if anybody had any question, but is there a motion to approve as, oops.
Excuse me, I just need to make an addition to the motion, and we need to include 512 and 514.
Okay, so that's just the last one, 514.
No, I'm sorry, just 512. You need to add 512.
Well, 512 is already on my list.
Yeah, and 514 is there also.
Oh, I printed out the wrong one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so are we good? All
Yes.
right, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the open meetings of March 12th, 2020, April 16th, 2020, April 23rd, 2020, May 6th, 2020, May 12th, 2020, and May 14th, 2020, as presented / amended.
I second the motion.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes,
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
all right, thank you. We can move into the public agenda. And during the public agenda, the people who are at the meeting can raise their hand when I ask for any comments from any of the agenda items. If we do a vote, before we make that vote, we will bring it out to the public so that you can have a question or any other concern that you might bring to the table. That being said, I think our first agenda item in the public agenda is number 8, which is the 2021 Coventry Public School Calendar. And Mr. Levis, could you please respond to that?
Sure. So yesterday, the governor had her press conference at 1 o'clock, and she, I don't know what the term is, passed an executive order. We were given the calendar the same time the public was, even though I had access to a draft of a state calendar that she asked all the districts to adopt for students. So it's a 180-day calendar. It starts on August 31st, ends June 16th. And it has 2 vacations, the February vacation, April vacation. It also has 8 professional development days built into it, those 8 professional development days. And Jim, can you bring this up on the screen, please? Our calendar. The 8 professional development days are days where students will do virtual learning. And so what we did is we did a crosswalk with a draft of a calendar. We had met with the CTA, the union, because we had just negotiated 4 half-days of professional development. We didn't want any more time away from instruction, so we were able to include those in half-days that the high school had. We included those into the 8 PD days that are on the calendar. So our calendar is aligned with the executive order calendar. We have our 2 professional development days, or 2 days with the teachers prior. That's, you'll see, August 27th and 28th. So it wasn't a real heavy lift for us in terms of the calendar, adopting the state calendar. I know we took a long time to bring the calendar forward. Part of that was because of our contract negotiations, but then we held off again. It was on the agenda last school committee meeting, but when we found out the state was going to, there was a draft calendar floating out there, we held off to this meeting. So again, it's an executive order. We have to adopt it. The districts are allowed to make minor changes based on contract language, but the major changes that are part of the substantial changes in this calendar, such as the vacation days, the start date, the end date for students, and the professional development days, those days are specifically addressed, my understanding is in the executive order. So, and I put this on our website as a draft so that the public could have a chance to see it prior to this. So that's it. I don't know if anybody, the committee has questions about it. I want to thank the teachers union for, allowing us to build in those half days right into the PD days that are mandated in the state calendar.
I have a question.
I think, Kathy, you trying to talk?
Yes, Jim just unmuted me. I made the mistake of muting myself and I couldn't unmute myself again. Sorry about that. Yes, Donna, did you have a question?
Yeah, now, Craig, is this replacing, does that mean that all districts they're not they're gonna have the 2 vacations? Because I know some districts have one vacation, one.
Correct. So, I mean, I don't know how they're handling it, but my understanding is they're going to have to adopt this. Like that would be considered something that they have to adopt. My feeling is that they felt when we adopted the calendar, remember we came back, we adopted a May and June calendar based on distance learning. My feeling is that, while obviously everybody would love to be back in school, if things start to transpire during the year, no matter what scenario we find ourselves in, having a consistent state calendar will be helpful. So,
I agree.
yeah, so those districts are going to have to, my understanding, I'm not a lawyer, but they're going to have to adopt the major changes. Now, if they have other dates or extended time for students or teachers, that can go beyond this, but this is the minimum for students. So in those professional development days, I don't know if I was clear about it, those will be virtual learning days for students. So it'll be professional development days for teachers, but students will be expected to do assignments virtually and, at home.
Okay. I heard that the snow days are also going to be in.
Correct. The snow days, and that's something I didn't mention. That's a good point, Donna. That snow days will be virtual from now on. That we'll be able to cancel school and we'll have to have plans that will allow students to continue learning at home. So, and that was based on the success that, overall success that districts have had with distance learning. So.
Okay, were there any other questions? Dave, did you have any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. Luke, did you have anything?
No, I want to extend it, but I agree as a parent. I think the earlier we can get this out there, the better. I'm glad they did it early. Yeah, I know I'm looking at this, it's Mondays across the board for the professional development. So I think that works for a lot of parents having an extended weekend if they need to stay home to take care of that. They can plan early. And it's also consistent across the state. Last year, we had an issue with the April vacation where some districts had it on a different schedule. We kind of ran into some issues on that. So I think this will hopefully, normally I like local control, but I think in this scenario, it's better that the state takes the forefront. So I think it's great.
Mr. Pearson, did you have anything? Any questions?
Excuse me. No questions.
Okay. Are we ready to move on this motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to accept the school calendar for the year 2021 as presented.
I second the motion.
Anything from the public before we actually call for the vote? I don't see any hands raised. Mr. Murphy, do you see anything?
No.
I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. So could we have a roll call vote, please?
Kathy Patnode,
Yes.
Dave Florio,
Yes.
Luke Murray,
Yes.
Donna Colunian,
Yes.
James Pearson,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item number 9, the COVID-19 expenses FY20 and FY21. That was our reference number 4. Mr. Levis, did you want to start this or?
Yeah, I'll start. I don't know where to start, to be honest with you, but there's for the public, there's 4 attachments to this.
Yeah, there are.
I think that, Mr. Murphy, if you can bring up the ASA document to start. So just so we know, I had shared a spreadsheet that we've been keeping on purchases that we've made this year. And it totals, it doesn't sound like a lot. It totals, I think, about $48,000. You know, don't forget, once it started, school ended quickly. So we on this list is cleaning supplies, some technology, printers that we had to purchase, scanners for people to do remote work. We also we have ordered 10 electrostatic sprayers at $2,400 a piece. We put that on because this is a list we're compiling for
Can you
potential
put in your
reimbursement.
phone, Bramblebush or, I'm not, Gale Court?
Hey, I'm gonna interject. If anybody is not part of the committee,
Stonegate,
could they mute their phone or their web,
Bramblebush off of Stonegate.
please? If you're not part of the meeting and talking, can you please mute either your internet on the Zoom meeting or the phone, please?
And just to add to that, I know people have watched the council, they have a webinar version, but they have a better, you know, I'm gonna say a better version that we have, they receive for free. We're hoping that we can utilize that because, you know, we're part of the town so that we can kind of minimize some of these challenges. But so we have a list, like I was saying, 40 some odd $1,000. We have held back on some purchases. I also submitted, I was talking about electrostatic sprayers. We were able to order 10. We have 4 that are back ordered. We need multiples for our middle school, high school, for Washington Oak. And then we have electrostatic sprayers we've purchased for the rest of our elementary schools, 1 for Oak Haven and 1 for Central, you know, at the Annex administration. The chemicals for that are $68 for 4 gallons, but we don't know how many gallons. The company that we've purchased these through, and I'm sure we can do some more research, but we haven't received an answer yet. The company that we purchased these from, it's new to them, so they weren't able to tell us how many gallons will we use for square footage. And so that's a big factor. What we haven't added on the list, our nurses just submitted 2 months worth of PPE, and that's around $47,000. Now, we donated all of our PPE from all of our buildings, even knowing that we may need it at some point, but with the crisis going on and the request, we donated every bit of PPE we had, including at the high school and our health careers. We donated through the National Guard, who distributed to hospitals and other people in need. We may decide to purchase that. We're waiting for ability to purchase through the state. So that's why the list is $47,000. We also have, I've identified Chromebooks. Moving forward, knowing that at some point distance learning may be in the cards for everybody again, even if we open up, if we have to shut down a school or shut down the district, if there is a second wave and a spike, the current Chromebooks that we have, the older Acers that we're using will not survive. So we've put together a proposal for grades 3, 4, and 5. And I believe we just got a more current quote. That's approximately $357,000. And that's in addition of our regular cycle of replacing Chromebooks. We also talked about, there's a sheet that I put together, and I'm not doing this to be fearful. Remember, everything that I'm talking about is in addition to the $1.8 million that we've requested for the town. That's what we need pre-COVID-19 to move forward. There's been recommendations. I don't know what will come next Friday from the Department of Health, but there's recommendations about custodians. And we did just figuring out how many custodians we potentially could use across the district if we have to clean everything every 1 to 2 hours, so that every desktop, every doorknob, in addition to cleaning bathrooms, ongoing. We'd probably need 4 custodians potentially. This could be higher or lower. For the high school, for the middle school, we'd probably need an additional 1 to 2 custodians for Washington Oak, and then at least 1 custodian, additional custodian for every other building. And I put a number to that, right? We figured, it would be 600,000 to 700,000, could be higher or lower depending on whether somebody takes family health care. We talked about transportation. We're not sure what the guidance is going to be. But if we had to put the recent CDC guidance that came out, was for our buses would be about 13 individuals. We'd have to get 4 times the number of buses that we have. So I can't even put a number on that. We're not sure about nurses, that we may need additional nurses depending on the scenario, probably at the middle and high school, definitely, maybe at Washington Oak, depending on, because their roles may change. I put in a quote about nursing space, nursing offices. What the Department of Health and what the CDC recommend are these negative pressure offices, having access directly to the outdoors. If you've been into many of our schools, many of our nurses, it's impossible to even retrofit. So we looked at, again, this isn't to scare the community, just to be, I want you to hear it, at least coming from us early on, that we looked at what the cost would be for modulars, because it's the only way that we could address the need and have access to the outdoors and have a space where we could completely isolate an individual if they were identified as being positive. So there's a quote there. And none of this is definitive because we don't know what the guidance ultimately is going to be. As you heard the governor, her gold standard is we're all back in school as everybody back in next year in the fall. But we need to be starting to be thinking about these. So I put together some sheets that I shared with the committee that list these different expenses. We talked about monitoring. If kids get on the bus, recommendation is you take their temperature, monitor them prior to getting on the bus. So we would need monitors on buses that don't have monitors to do that. How do we screen people coming into our buildings? We need to look at that. So additional staff, if we have to open buildings with smaller class size, or we have some kids in class, but some parents choose not to send their kids. Are we going to say to them we're not going to educate them? Or do we hire additional staff to provide distance learning? So these are all potential variables. As we start to plan, we need to cost these out and consider. But I thought this sheet, instead of just throwing out all these numbers, and which I've shared with the committee, but I thought this sheet is very, it's an eye opener. This takes a typical, whatever they determine a typical district in the country, and they have about 3,600, students, 8 school buildings, so many classrooms, they put so many staff, 40 school buses, and then they talk about, one category is adhering to health, monitoring, cleaning, disinfecting protocols, right? They talk about hiring staff to implement health and safety protocols. And you can see the numbers there. PPE. So we don't know when it comes to PPE. Originally, they're saying students and staff will have to wear masks. Now we're hearing potentially maybe only staff will have to wear masks. Well, that's a big difference between over 5,000 masks and being responsible maybe to provide them daily, or 750 masks. And that's just masks. Those aren't like the N95 masks that we'd have to provide for certain personnel that work with, potentially come in contact with someone that is ill, like our nurses. And then you look at the transportation and potential childcare, because they're saying if we have tiered buses, some kids are going to get dropped off very, very early. How do we deal with that? Some kids will stay very, very late if we had to do that. So now they come up with an average of $1,778,139, right? So this is in the country. We know things in the Northeast tend to be higher. We also know our school district is larger, and there are other variables. This would be in addition to the $1.8 million that we've asked for the town. And that's why it's so important for us to continue to push to allow, hopefully, that the council is listening and the town manager to allow the voters to make a decision. And the governor did mention that there's going to be significant costs for us going back into school. She mentioned the $42 million, and I'll talk about that a little later. That $42 million for us is about $600,000, right? So you look at these things, if we had to hire the, 14 custodians, doesn't cover that. Additional nurses, it won't even touch that. Probably won't even touch our PPE. And I can't imagine, looking at the modulars or looking at buses if we had to go that route. So there are going to be, no matter what scenario we come up with, most likely some significant costs. And we just need to be thinking about that. There's been many articles out there. Sarah's been on, Sarah Mandrielli, our Director of Finance, many calls, many webinars where they're saying unless there's a significant stimulus package, round 4 that supports cities and towns and schools, we're going to have all of us, not just Coventry, significant challenges in the fall. So that's why, to me, I didn't know where to start, put these sheets together with numbers. I don't know what the fall is going to look like, but there's very few scenarios that are going to have it so that it's going to cost us what pre-COVID-19 was. So I don't know, Sarah, if you have anything you want to add to this before we open up to the committee for questions or comments.
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. I will just share that I did forward all of you just before the meeting started an email that I sent to the Department of Ed. So a survey came out today asking us to quantify our expected expenditures next year. But again, we have no idea of what the requirements will be. So I really think that as a
It's just freezing up.
push for answers because really until we have clear direction and guidance, we're all kind of aiming in the dark right now. I don't know if you caught that because I think I froze.
Yeah, you did freeze. So thank you, Mr. Levison, Sarah, for those comments. I'm just going to go right down the committee to ask if there's any questions for Mr. Levis or Mrs. Mandarelli. Dave?
He gave a very stock presentation, and I just hope our council's watching this and the community is watching this, because we're gonna have to raise some money to make this happen. And if we want good schools, and we want good property values, and we want our community respected by other cities and towns like it always has been, we're gonna have to get some money up there. We're going to need that 1.8 million at least from the council, and God only knows how we're gonna come up with the other 1.778 million. But you've been in tough spots. You've been in tough spots before, Madam Chair, and we'll make it. We'll get there.
Nothing
I
quite
hope.
like this. This is a
No.
once in a lifetime.
I know.
Mr. Murray?
I'm sorry, can I just one thing to state before Mr. Murray, and I apologize. I know everybody's always been asking about savings. Sarah and I talked about this. We'll have a better idea at our next school committee meeting, but realizing that the biggest wild card, we still don't have an answer of where we stand with the transportation. We've only paid, I think, 200 and some odd $1,000, but we still have to figure out, but that'll can skew the savings. We should have an idea of substitutes, a better idea of energy savings. We had even talked about healthcare, depending on what our experience was, it potentially could affect our working rate next year. But as you see, I don't see the savings being going to rescue us out of this situation, especially if we don't get the 1.8. But we will discuss that, bring that in detail at the next meeting, because I know that's been a question everybody's asked about, so I apologize for taking the time there.
That's okay. Mr. Murray, did you have any questions or comments?
So the good news is, it sounds like the kids are going back to school, which is a positive. It's just how to get them there safely, right, and manage the situation. So I think it's doable. We're not the only district facing this. We're all going to be in the same boat. There's going to be a cry for additional money, both at state and federal level. When that comes down and how it's parsed out and the devil's in the details, we'll find out. I think the important thing to note is we have to operate with abundance of caution at the time, meaning not only do we have to continue to ask the town for what we previously asked, because I think that's a smart thing to do, but also purchasing moving forward. The only thing I would say contributing is, which, I believe, Sarah already knows and not telling anything she hasn't heard, is pooling resources. We're all going to be buying the same things. We're all going to be buying hand sanitizer. We're all going to be buying personal protective equipment, trying to work across district with the state, trying to drive down as much of that cost as we can. So this 1.8 million, if that's the number, maybe gets driven down by a percentage. But we're not gonna get there from here. We're not gonna end up at we're not gonna drive it down 50%. So I think we're gonna have to try to get creative, but it's nice to say do more with less, and these times it's tough. The truth is sometimes less is less. And so we're going to have to balance that out depending on what we have moving forward. But I did have a quick question. So the purchases that have already been made, so like the 24,000 on the sanitizers, did those go out the bid? Were those emergency purchases? Were those through the MPA? How are those big purchases being done?
I believe that, well, I don't know if Sarah's a better answer, so I believe the sanitizer, I think we've been purchasing off the MPA.
Sarah, you're muted, so.
I don't know if I'm frozen, but
Oh,
yeah. So we were given some recommended companies that had them in stock. And actually, I'm not even sure if they've come in yet because there was such a back order. So we did actually deem them as an emergency purchase. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understood.
But again, those were ordered, gosh, almost at the start of the COVID, and we still have not received them yet. So that is why we put that order in pretty quickly. But I can send you the information on that afterwards.
All right, understood. Listen, we all went through it. Every municipality had to do emergency purchasing procedures. I think my only concern moving forward is we continue to have accountability on large purchases as we come out and things become normalized. But it's not to, I appreciate the fact that you jumped on it because we don't know when that equipment's going to arrive. It could be another 2 months, right? So we need to be prepared to get those purchases done. I guess along those lines, are there other purchases that we plan to make in this fiscal year to set us up for the next, for the start of school, knowing that there's lead time on some of these items?
Right. So, and this is kind of the catch that we're trying to face along with all the other districts. We meet with the business managers every other week to try and decide, because I will say as all school business officials, we really don't want to compete against each other. So we're trying to make sure that we're doing what other districts are doing and not, racing to order everything that we can get our hands on. So we are trying to work and do purchases as joint collaboratives so that we can bring that down. We did, as Mr. Levis said, that we did get an estimate for about 2 months worth of supplies from the school nurses. And that was like about $42,000. We did not order all of that. We had thought maybe at first we should focus on the elementary grades before we expanded. So we may do some minor purchases before June 30th. But we will wait to do through purchasing collaboratives or whatever comes out in a better method so that it's not considered an emergency. So we'll do some, but we won't significantly ramp up, and especially without guidance. We don't want to have so much stuff that we may or may not need and spend resources on something that we're not required to do. So we really are hoping that we can get more guidance from the state before we make purchases.
Gotcha. Yeah, and you know, the other concern I guess I have, and I don't know how this affects, is the longer that the budget gets pushed, because obviously everyone's waiting to hear. I see you have your kids in the background. The longer that this gets pushed, I guess one of my concerns is we have to expend some dollars, right? And get into next year knowing kind of what we're looking at. If we have to go into it anticipating that we're going to get that 1.8, I guess, because of, you know, we've already made some moves on layoffs and different things regarding to the budget, and we kind of know where we're at on that realm. What we don't know is all this other items. So the longer we drag that out, we don't know if we're going to be at 1.8 or 0. I mean, how does that affect you as far as planning, I guess is my question.
Well, I think one thing we want to keep in mind too is that it was just yesterday that the governor announced to us that her plan is to reopen everything. I think before that, we were all thinking that the focus was going to be on elementary school and then maybe we would roll up. So what happened yesterday completely caught everybody off guard. And I know the 42 million will be discussed, but as Mr. Levis said, out of that, we're looking at about 620,000. And that's not before we reduce for private school allocations. So, you know, we aren't expending the full budget in FY20, so we will need to carry those funds over for available funds to purchase. That was what we had always said, is that any savings from this year should be used to make the one-time expenditures for next year to get us in a position to be able to reopen. I think that we stand strong that that 1.8 was always needed to handle pre-COVID operations, and that has not gone away. And the thought that we can fill the budget gap with our $620,000 from the feds out of that 42 million, and whatever savings that we end with this year, which again, we may still be on the hook with that transportation cost. So, you know, we're not looking at enough funds to say we don't need any of that 1.8. And I think that that's a message that we need to focus on with the council. I really don't feel like we should shift away from that whatsoever. I think we'll set ourselves up for failure.
Yeah, and that 600,000 won't go a long way towards filling the $900,000 gap that they cut us this year. So,
right.
All right, I'm gonna relinquish and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mrs. Colonian?
I've had a little bit of a time to look at this. I noticed that just deep cleaning of a school after a confirmed case is $26,000. Now that's a one-time cleaning, right? So every time there's a confirmed case, we have to spend that? Is that?
Those are estimates. I mean, we'd have to look and see what, so looking at our high school and our middle school, you know, what makes it challenging is they're old spaces, right? They're not, if you go into new construction, I live in Attleboro, they're building a new high school, straight lines. It's much easier. Our school, especially you look at the middle school, no rhyme or reason in terms of how it flows.
Oh, I know.
So we don't have, I don't have an estimate. This is national and they're picking a, you know, what they call a typical district, but it's something we need to think about. It would, you know, deep cleaning versus, you know, we'll be doing sanitizing every single day. You know, that's what the electrostatic sprayers are for, that once we make sure that everybody's out of the building, which means we might have to do a third shift, right? Because our buildings are used.
Right.
And I do want to just say that somebody said that, you know, we're going to go open everybody. That's the gold standard, but even the governor said that, you know, there's a lot of things could happen that we have to map out different scenarios. So I want the community to, and we'll talk about that the next item, but we're going to map out different scenarios. And I think, you know, the elementary scenario still might be a reasonable, rational scenario, but we'll get there down the road, not today.
I just want to say too, is I was thinking about, you know, well, how we're supposedly saved money with the transportation. And then I started thinking about, well, what's going to happen when the school opens? That money that we saved in transportation this year, we're going to have to spend double that transportation next year.
Yeah.
You know, it's
So right.
So
that's if we save it. If we save it.
If we save it. That's right. If we save it, because that's
would be
not
more
even a
than
given
double.
yet.
Right.
That's not even a given, but that's just my take on that, because, you know, again, you know, I'll reiterate, we need that 1.8 million for our regular expenses because we're gonna have so many more expenses with the whole COVID-19 that I just hope they can see past everything and give us what we need. That's my take. I'm done.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. Mr. Pearson, any comments, questions?
Nothing I want to say in public because I'll probably start spewing out profanities over the situation. No, but seriously, just growing more concerned about the lack of communication from the state. I know they're starting to give us information, but only just starting to give us information, and we have a short time frame to turn this around and plan for opening of schools. So, yeah, and money we don't have. So let's wait and see what happens. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And I concur with Mr. Pearson in the sense that the time frame that we've been given, when the superintendents get an invitation an hour before a Zoom meeting to get this announcement that we're all going to be starting school and on August 31st is, to say the least, a bit frustrating. I'm not sure all the people that needed to be at the table were at the table, obviously. And I'm just gonna keep all my fingers and toes crossed because I personally think that that's a real lofty goal, that we will open up all our schools on the 31st. I'm thinking it has to be hybrid. I mean, I've already heard from lots of parents who say, you know, how can you fit all those kids in those elementary classrooms and have social distancing? So, I mean, there's going to be some real issues, and I know we're going to talk about it with the reentry, but it was good to see the figures on the paper that says how much just potentially we might have to concur the costs. Just thinking about those mobile classrooms that we would have to rent for nursing stations, you know, how do you go about affording that? So,
Yeah.
excuse me, allergies. At any rate, that's it for me as well. I don't know if anybody from the public wanted to has any questions or concerns before we move on. I don't see any hands up.
No.
So
I don't see any.
I don't see any either. Okay, thank you. So I guess we can move on. Just a second, thank you for putting that all down on paper. So we had at least a sort of a brief look at what may be our costs coming up. So the next is number 10, which is the Reentry Planning Task Force. It was our reference number 5. I suspect, Mr. Levis, you wanted to start this?
Sure. And there's a document, Mr. Murphy, you can pull it up. I did share the document with the entire community. It's a PDF. This is a work in progress.
Right.
I think what's important to know is that a couple things. I had a meeting yesterday with superintendents that, there's 2 unions in the state. There's a National Education Association, then the American Federation of Teachers. And so as a Superintendents Association, we thought it would be important for all those superintendents that are AFT districts, which we are, and we would meet together with our president of the union, and we met yesterday in Cranston. And if you followed the whole graduation, which turned out to be a wonderful celebration, I believe, for our community, our graduates, and there'll be more. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end of this meeting. But it was it really ended up pitting district versus district. And I know the governor's office tried to be helpful and give guidance, but there was actually contradicting statements from the same individual representative from the governor's office. I received a go-ahead for a certain process, and one of my colleagues with the same process, we received a statement that said he couldn't do it. And if he did and someone got sick, he'd be liable, right? So we want to avoid that. The stakes are even bigger here. This is bigger than a graduating class. So we're trying to work together. We're all going to have our individual task force, which this document goes through. But we're going to keep that communication because we want to be unified. We want to make sure that we map out different scenarios. You know, I'm going to stand here tonight, or actually sit here tonight, and tell you I have no idea what August 31st is going to look like. And with all due respect to the governor, there's so many variables that are going to play out in this, funding definitely being one of them. We may be able to come up with a plan, but we may have to say we cannot, as Mr. Pearson said, we cannot spend money we don't have. We will not be the only district in that situation. So the purpose of this task force is to look at major tenets of getting back into school. One is governance and communication. You know, I hope that we've done a decent job, I hope we've done a great job communicating throughout this to all of our stakeholders. You know, I think we've been honest, we've been transparent. You know, sometimes I hear people say I haven't answered their question. And there's a difference between not answering somebody's question and giving them an answer they don't want to hear. And I think we do a really good job. You know, sometimes I take time to answer. I may get 6 or 7. You know, you kind of see these emails coming. I wait to get them all in, and then I do a response to everybody. But I think we've done an excellent job communicating and listening. Our distance learning has been a work of revision. Parents, students, teachers have had feedback, and we've incorporated it. And so this is going to be on a larger scale. We're going to have 3 different areas. One is looking at communication and leadership. And these are potential members right now. I mean, these are some members, and we have to fill in some of the membership. Jim, I don't know if you can go to the next topic. That's communication leadership. There's going to be 3 areas. I'm going to facilitate one. The next one, I believe, is Don Cowart. You got to go up a little bit more. Next page. There we go. This is going to be instructional core in SEL, social emotional learning. And Don is going to facilitate this. We'll have all kinds of stakeholders in. I've put some names in, but we'll populate it with other people. I had a long meeting today with our entire administrative team, and many of them aren't on this list. I will put them in one of these 3 areas. So we're going to make sure that we can you know, assess where every student is and help every student move forward, not only academically, but make sure we take care of their social emotional needs also. And we'll be populating this over the next week. And then the third bucket or area that's going to be facilitated by Mrs. Andrews is operations and resources. So we'll look at all of our facilities. And this is where it's going to get really down the granular, because when we plan for reentry, planning for reentry in Black Rock is going to look different than it is in Weston, just on the facility itself. We'll look at technology needs. We'll look at finances. We'll look at safety. We'll have, you know, our police and fire part of this. We're going to look at, obviously, sanitation, our custodians. And we'll have community, parent, and hopefully student representation in many of these areas. So the goal for me was to start a meeting next week to frame it, to bring in other additional players. We're also going to put a survey out to everybody next week so that everybody will have an opportunity to give feedback. But then yesterday, the governor had said that we're not going to get any real guidance until the 19th. So I'm still kind of contemplating, will I have a meeting late next week just to frame the work and wait for the guidance, or will we wait to the guidance? The key is we have till July 17th. So once we have that initial meeting, we'll break up into these 3 groups that may break up into smaller groups. We've got to come up with an action plan like we did with our distance learning by July 17th. But I want to be clear, July 17th's plan will be like a distance learning plan. It'll be a framework, you know, we'll have addressed all key areas, but we're still going to need to continue to work on different scenarios. And we look at the scenarios going from still that we'll have to do distance learning for everybody or for most people, to the other extreme would be everybody's back in school like we were up through March 13th. And then in between, there are different variations in hybrid models. but we also have to look at individual student need too. So that we may do a distance learning program for many students, but we may bring special populations in. Remember that what hasn't changed from the Department of Health or the CDC is they talk about these pods, keeping groups of students together with the teacher. And while we look and see how that may be more feasible at elementary, there may be creative ways of doing that at the middle and high school, where, you know, and again, I'm just throwing this out there. This will be up for the teams to determine, but what would prevent us from having a group of students at the high school work with one teacher, but then be doing virtual learning while they're in school with that teacher, you know, or bringing in welding students with their teacher to work on welding, or automotive students, or transition students, our life skills students that are predominantly with the same group of individuals. So we have a lot to plan, a lot to think about. Some of my colleagues are saying, well, we know we're not going to have the money, so let's, like, transportation is a begin, you know, an end all be all, and we can't do it. There's no way we can get enough buses to transport our students. Or with 13 students on a bus, which was the guidance of CDC for our size buses maybe 3 days ago, it would be impossible. It would take over 2 hours to get elementary school students into school, and then 2 hours to get them home. What do we do with them? You know, how do we stagger? You could stagger transportation, but how do we stagger instruction? So there's all these variables, and then we'd have to have a before school setting and an after school setting. So these are all these variables that these teams, this task force will have to look at. And as we break up into our individual groups in those 3 areas, there may be more opportunity for you know, getting more input from the community members at that time. So this is going to be a fluid process. We don't know what the guidelines are. We don't know, we do know that the expectation is we have to turn in a plan on the 17th of July. We don't know what the template's going to look like. So there's a lot of work. So with the administrators today, I told them to take a break tomorrow, relax, you know, and let's, you know, focus on the successes we've had this year despite the challenges. But honestly, next week, we're going to hit the ground running. You know, when people say, well, aren't you glad the school year's over? You know, it's kind of like, not really, you know, but so we have a lot of work to do. You know, and as Mr. Pearson said, in terms of the communication, you know, I don't want to badmouth the governor. I think she's done, you know, a pretty good job, you know, a great job leading. But I think right now, some of the parts that are missing are, you know, while they're talking about 42 million, it sounds like a lot, or, you know, we're willing to use additional CARE Act money, or hoping we get another stimulus package. At the same time, we're finding that, you know, everybody's pushing the budget down the road. Our categorical funds, which include, you know, monies around CTE, Perkins money, those monies may not be available to us until late August or September. You know, everything else could be on, you know, many of those funds are on hold in terms of distribution to districts. So on one hand, we just talked about the additional costs. On the other hand, if they cut state aid, I mean, we've already been cut $900,000, right? You know, we're assuming that the council is listening and that they'll at least allow the taxpayers to vote on our original request. But there's all these variables that will come into play. So, you know, again, we're going to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. I can't have everybody on the task force, so we have to find other ways, starting with the survey, to get people's input. But we have a lot of work to do. We'll make sure that we communicate the work. We'll create a link to our website where this will be fluid and public as we develop, so people can look at it and give comments. But there's so much to be done, but I think we have to do due diligence. We have to think through every scenario and every potential and put them on paper, and then, you know, things will fall into place. You know, we don't know where we'll be in terms of the COVID-19 in August 31st. We hope we're in stage 3 or phase 3, but we don't know. So we don't know what the guidelines around transportation will be. We don't know what the exact guidelines around food service will be, you know. So there's so many things we don't know. So we're really going to have to get to work on the things that we do know. We can figure out what additional costs are for custodians if we had to add another nurse, if we had to what types of equipment we have to purchase, if we have to purchase additional instructional materials, if we have to purchase additional Chromebooks. We can figure all that out. So I know I said a lot. There's a lot of work to do, but, and I don't want to overwhelm people. I think we will accomplish this. We will get this done. I have faith in our community. They've rallied, they've pulled together. Our administrators, our teachers, our support staff, our parents and students have stepped up beyond expectation. So we'll get this done. But it's going to be challenging. It's going to be difficult. And that's my $4.63 worth.
Well, that's a pretty reasonable amount of money.
All I have. That's all I have.
That's probably all you have in your wallet. Okay, well, Dave, I'm going to start with you. Do you have any questions or comments for this rollout, this reentry planning task force?
Well, Madam Chair, I've had two individuals who were parents ask me to join the task force. I referred them to Mrs. McDonald, who referred them to Mr. Levis. You know them. They're extremely dedicated parents, and I'm heartened by it, Madam Chair. It's nice to see parents who really want to be involved for all the right reasons. And that's two of many. But they really want to be involved, and they really want to help. And they're like you. They're like you when I first met you, Madam Chair. They want to help. They want to help the system, and they want to make it better. So if there's one thing if there's one positive thing that has happened, is that it's mobilized some parents to do good things for our schools. And that's what really matters. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Florio.
Welcome, Madam Chair.
Mr. Murray.
Yeah, so I think I figured out our T-shirt right now. It's what is it? Keep calm and let's get this done, right, Craig? Yeah. So yeah, that may be the governor's T-shirt. So question on involvement from parents. We have some pretty tight timeframes here. How are you going to go about recruiting a diversity of parents as part of the process?
Yeah, so I've had probably 100 individuals offer a variety, and that's why Mr. Florio can say about 2 individuals. So just going to work with our administrative team and pick, and I guess I could do a lottery. I don't want to, that's why we're trying to find additional ways, not to skirt your question, but I want to find additional ways for people to have a voice, because it's impossible to have everybody on this task force. Some districts aren't including community members, parents on the task force. They're just allowing a focus group maybe or survey. I definitely want them on here. And representation, not just like I said, we want parents in terms of that have students with disabilities on. So I'll work with our administrative to figure out how we can get those individuals on, and those other individuals that reach out, I'll make sure that there's ways. We talked about breaking up even into smaller groups. Amy Anzalone, principal at Western, brought up a good point today, because at some point we're gonna have to break down, just go school by school. And so there'll be opportunities. It may not be next week, but we'll try to incorporate as many people and give as many opportunities as voice. And the same thing with community members. I've had many community organizations want to be involved. And so, I'm not going to have 6 mental health associations, but we'll have a representative, but I'll find other ways for those individuals to partner. That's the best answer I can give you tonight.
Oh, that's fair. And I think that for those who are tuning in too, is if you're not on a committee or you're not necessarily involved in those day-to-day activities, remind you that we are school committee members. You're welcome to reach out, communicate. We can provide updates, or if you have ideas, reach out to us and provide that through us, and we can communicate with the leadership. Technology and distance learning. So as I look at this plan, distance learning is kind of weaved in as a potential scenario, but not really a committee. And I just see that as a vital component, because if we slip back into a scenario where things get worse, and we haven't yet perfected the process. I think we've worked really hard as a district to get there, but even to the point where technology used in the classroom for as opposed to distance learning, local learning. So you mentioned one scenario: a teacher is one part of the school teaching a class led by another pod, let's say, so that they can get they can get assisted by those same teachers as part of that pod, but that expertise of a separate teacher from another wing of the building is still conveyed. So, I mean, that's a good approach. It's just, it's going to require additional technology and thoughtfulness and like specific. So I didn't know if that was something that maybe needs a stronger focus or.
So it's in the document about looking at technology, but distance learning, just so you know, we actually are creating, and this came through from Don Coward and Lori Andrews, that we need to strengthen. You know, this was thrown at us, right? And we pulled together a distance learning plan in a matter of days, and then we've built on it throughout these 12 weeks. But moving forward, we need to perfect it. So we actually are putting a draft policy together. Don and Lori are working on that. We talked with our administrative team. We're going to share that with all parties, including educators, people with curriculum expertise, and because we need to, moving forward, we need to have clear parameters, clear expectations, around grading practices, things that we need to really, like you said, perfect moving forward. So we're working on that, and that's a big part of this, because distance learning will play some role in this moving forward. I mean, even if we all go back, if this spikes again and we have to close down all of our schools, or like the snow days, we need to have, we want to perfect this and look at, part of that too is the professional development that we need to continue to do for our teachers. One of the things that we didn't talk about when we were talking about the funds, the last segment, the CARE Act funds and our $620,000, those can be used for the summer learning, whatever we're putting together some programming for the summer, but they can also be used for professional development or technology to shore up some of these things. The challenge, as Sarah had said, $620,000 is, if you just held that sum of money and then looking at the turbulence in terms of financing that's all around us, it's a drop in the bucket. But those are areas that we are aware of and that we are going to be planning for. So just for clarification, that is on our radar. Those are
That's good to hear, because I mean, obviously this is going to be here to stay, I think, well beyond this situation. Even if a vaccine is found, I think the old school, going back to the old routines, there's some new opportunities that have, it's a blessing and a curse in a way, right? There's always open opportunities here we don't want to waste. So the last comment I'll make is, I appreciate the fact that you're reaching out. There's a task force together. We don't know what we don't know, right? So, we're just going to have to sit back and take the information as it comes. And, and I think anybody watching too, is that sometimes there's a thought in the community that we always are in the know, right? Take today, for example. The announcements made, we're given very short notice, the past few days. So we want to be more in the know. I think the state hopefully will drag us into that. But, if the answers come slow, it's because, the information rolls slow. And I think the key thing is that we're communicating with the parents and the district as soon as possible so that they can plan on their own lives and understand, including our teachers who have to, by the way, go back into a building who are probably the highest risk, especially our older populations. We talk a lot about the students, but the truth is that our most vulnerable are our teachers and administrators who are going to have to be put in a precarious situation. And I applaud them for going back in, or, hopefully when the time comes, but we got to make sure that we're protecting them as well. And I know that we will. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mrs. Colonian?
A lot of work went into that document, Greg. You did a good job. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm not, I appreciate it, but a lot of that document came from many other organizations. I do owe Judy Paolucci, the superintendent in Smithfield. She shared a lot of the template with me, so I thank her. And there was a couple of real think tanks that put some of this together. So we, you know, in our staff, they've been phenomenal. I mean, people have been sharing so much information with us. It's overwhelming. So at some point, we said this today, we've got to say, okay, these are the areas we think these are all encompassing, and this is what's going to drive us. And so thank you.
Yeah, it was a lot of work that went into it, you can tell. And, you know, it was like I went through the whole thing, and it was, you know, you thought about a lot of things, and whether you pulled it from other places, the fact is that you know, you got yourself a template that you can follow. So that's great. A step in the right direction.
Thank you, Mrs. Clooney. And then finally, Mr. Pearson.
Great job breaking this up into sub-teams. I think that's a very strategic way to handle the massive complexity of what you're facing. And just looking forward to seeing what the output of these teams is.
Yeah.
Great.
I just think the communication part, and I know several people hit on it, but you know, that's one thing. You know, sometimes there's a sense you need to be guarded, right? And I can only speak for myself, but I felt that through this process, and I've shared a lot of my thoughts, and like I always say to people, when it's at least a video, if I get 30 seconds into it, you don't like it, you can just turn me off, right? So, but I learned that, you know, at least in Coventry, we truly are going through this together. Because if I share a thought, and I may think it's a foolish thought, and maybe it is, but I have 6 or 8 or 10 or 50 people write back to me and say they're in the same spot. You know, I always say, you know, and I'm very redundant, but I feel we have much more in common than we do that's different in each one of us. And so I think we've modeled that. We've tried to communicate. I'm not afraid to say I don't know. I'm not afraid to say this is where I think we're going, and then tomorrow to come back and say, well, I think this is where we need to go, but this is why, right? And I think that process, I hope this community has seen that as a school community, we've utilized this process throughout the pandemic, which has been, you know, let's be honest, it's been, you know, if I was the most creative writer in the world and had the most creative imagination, I could have never put this down on paper. This has been so challenging for at least myself, and I assume many people. But through it all, there's so much that we have to celebrate. And I've said this before, I feel that moving forward, we've created such a strong foundation as a school community, not just the administrators or the school committee, but as a school community, we've created this ability to communicate at a higher level. And I think that'll help us. I know it sounds philosophical, but I truly believe that'll help us throughout the challenges that we're gonna face. So, you know, I'm thankful to this entire community. You know, and I say I just happen to be the superintendent, but it's the work that everybody has done, including our students and our parents. It's been amazing. So that gives me hope moving forward. You know, something I can put that's tangible. I can feel it. I can see it. I can sense it. So.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. And so just my 2 cents worth, I was really happy to see this broken up into manageable sort of areas that make sense. I congratulate those of you who put this all together. I'm looking forward to seeing the output and what people bring to the table. I have no doubt that we have the leadership and the community behind us in trying to figure out how this is going to play out. And above and beyond all of that, I do agree that our students need to come back. Our kids need to be in school and be part of their community. Distance learning, even with Zoom and everything else, can be lonely. And so the social piece of our kids, they've missed a huge piece of that because of this COVID-19. And so I think it's going to be an extremely big challenge to get kids back. But I do have faith that people will brainstorm together and try to get this to work in some way, shape, or form. Even if parents who are remote learning, yeah, I'm doing remote learning, remote working from home, and will continue even when we start up in August. Some of those parents may, in fact, want to, take their kids to school themselves. So, we'll definitely have to get some surveys out there to see who really needs to be on a bus, who
Right.
might be able to, be brought to school by, their parent or someone in the neighborhood. So there's so many, options that are out there. I think, the way we did business and have done business in the past is going to end in some ways. And so a lot of the mandates perhaps may be lifted so that we can in fact afford what we're going to try to do in September. And I do know there's a lot of work before us. And I congratulate the beginning of this, that we're on the road. And it'll be interesting to see what the state says next week, to see what the guidance is, and above it all is whether or not the pandemic stays sort of manageable. No matter what we do, there's that risk that we will have to close down individual schools perhaps at any given time. So that's just the virus isn't going away. And so all of those contingencies have to be planned for, and I know that's on everybody's mind. But I do believe people will come together.
And I just want to add to one thing you're talking about. Students need the social and need to come to school, and I don't disagree. But just as much as our staff, just over the last 2 weeks, watching the graduation ceremony, watching the parades, the drive-throughs at all of our schools, our staff love their students. I mean, they love their students, and to see not only their faces when it takes place, when the students are there driving through, but to read the hundreds of emails amongst their, the colleagues or parents reaching out to me, telling me how wonderful the teachers have been. You can see that through this all, it's really, unified our school community. So I think everybody needs, we've realized what's really precious to us, and it's each other through this all. So I as much as students need it, our staff need it. They need that ability to be in front of their students, to, I know we're not in the touchy-feely world, but, especially the younger, hugging their students, it's just amazing what we've learned. And so this is something that, there's that incentive to do what we can do to get as many individuals back in school. It's there. It's there. So that's not going to be the issue. It's going to be what other variables block us from returning to school.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Levis. It's all of the relationships, obviously, and the love that we've seen in this community for all the way around has just been inspirational. It's been just lovely to watch.
I've had kids tell me through the grab and go lunch, and this will be the last thing I'll say, that they miss their bus drivers and the bus monitors. They really worry about them. The food service people that I'm with, or some of them every day, are in tears. They were in tears the other day, and I'm not saying this embarrass them, but they weren't able to say goodbye to their students, right? So there's a lot of, care and compassion for each other. That's despite the challenges that our universe is facing right now. There's a lot of goodwill from everybody, and we hope to build on that moving forward.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. Before we move on to the next agenda item, are there anybody want to raise their hand and be invited to speak? I don't see. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I'm on.
If someone wants to speak, you have to identify yourself and your address, please, for the record.
There's no one raising their hand. That was a person just coming in.
Okay, thanks, Jim. All right, I guess we can move on to agenda number 11, which is the F21 budget calendar discussion.
Yeah, I'll make this quick on my part, just that there's no documents. I don't have any documents. I had requested some from the town. But, just for the public, on the 22nd, February, sorry, whatever month we're in.
June.
June, thank you. Yeah. June 22nd, my understanding, and I can get some clarification from others here, that the council, that's when they're supposed to put forth a budget, municipal, school, and capital budget. The financial town meeting, I believe, would be, and I have this written down somewhere on my desk, but I don't know where it is, I believe would be July 12th, and the financial all-day referendum would be July 14th, as it stands now. And I just wanted to throw that out there so that, you know, we know that it's, and I also heard, again, and I'm not one to, I don't want to spread rumors, but it's been told to me that there's a potential that they could move it out again. I don't know if that would happen or not. I know the you know, we heard yesterday on a RISA call that, you know, the governor is looking to potentially move it out as far as they can. You know, the state wants to see, is there going to be more federal monies coming in? The cities and towns want to see, is the state, if more monies come in, will the state give those to the cities and towns? So everybody's still moving, you know, it's a moving target. But at some point, we're going to need to have a budget. So I just wanted to put it on the agenda to get it out there. And maybe it's already out there, and you know, maybe I'm the last to know, but I just felt it was important to, and if any of the committee members had something to talk about or had more information for the community, but that's where we stand right now. So we'll continue with this current budget, I assume, until we have a new budget, so.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, did you have any comments or questions?
No, Madam Chair, I have none.
Thank you. Mr. Murray?
I have nothing on this one right now. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Kalunian?
Nothing on this one.
And finally, Mr. Pearson, anything?
What's the over under? No, I'm kidding. Sorry. Yeah.
467, that's all I can afford, so.
I don't know. I'm not optimistic that they'll keep their current schedule, so we'll see what happens. No idea.
Okay.
I have a tendency to concur with Mr. Pearson. Is there anything from the public before we move on? I don't see any hands raised.
No.
Mr. Murphy, do you see anything?
Nope.
No hands.
All right, thank you. Then we're back to the superintendent's report, number 12.
Yeah, so the first one was Coventry High School 2020 graduate celebrations, and just anybody that had any involvement, if you saw any of the information or, you know, the emails or Facebook posts, you know, there was a lot of concern going into it. A lot of effort went in by so many. There's 8 or 12 individuals at the high school. I don't want to name them because I'll forget somebody that were there for the entire 30 hours. Many of the staff volunteered in 2-hour shifts over the course from last Thursday through Sunday. Thursday at noon, or yeah, I think it was noon, till Sunday at 6 p.m. or maybe 4 p.m. it ended. Each graduate, over 360 students, I believe, were given 15 or 20 minutes where the focus was solely on them. And when they entered the auditorium, it was their graduation. And the feedback, the feeling was just phenomenal. And I think it started with all the effort that was put into this. There were many videos that were put out. I don't know if you saw, I did share the student council, Coventry Student Council did a video about our hometown heroes and showed all these graduates. It was just so powerful. And then the parade of high school administrators and high school staff that went for 3.5 hours through all areas of the town. Students and families were out. Students, graduates were in their cap and gown, and it really just set the tone. You know, Brooke Maycumber did such a phenomenal job leading the high school. And on the 27th of this month, I don't even remember what the month it is again, but June, the 27th of June, on Channel 10, there's going to be another senior celebration. They're working on that right now. Josh Choppy, who is a graduate 2 years ago, who's a digital media specialist, he's at New England Tech. has done an amazing job working with them, videotaping. He's going to be spending hours and hours editing that. We hope to have that ready by the end of the month. And, you know, it's just, again, I know this is about the high school, but you can look at the ceremonies that have gone on in every single building, whether it was kindergarten at Washington Oak or 5th grade at Tioga. And just, I watched the emails go back and forth, and it's, you know, this is what everybody needed, you know, through these dark times, to have these celebrations where they're celebrating what this is all about, you know, our students and families and our staff. And it's been amazing. And, you know, again, I couldn't be more blessed to be in this position because we have such amazing families and students and our staff. Again, I'm redundant, but they just love each other, and it shows. And so it's been a tough, challenging year. But I think, you know, we've done right by the best we could do. You know, a lot of times you say you can do better. I don't know if we could do better in terms of how we're ending this year. And I want to thank our entire community. It's been amazing. And it's a once in a lifetime. Like they say, this what we're experiencing, maybe once in a lifetime. But the way that we've celebrated our students and families and our staff is a once in a lifetime. I mean, we've had individual district, you know, teacher of the year in the buildings where staff have gone in a parade and celebrated. I mean, people are celebrating each other's, you know, milestones, and it's been phenomenal. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then I don't know if anybody has any questions about that. I don't want to. I assume everybody concurs with me. So the second part of my report was just, and Mr. Murphy, can you bring up the pre-K document, please? So I just wanted to say that, you know, we received, I haven't received the award, the grant award in terms of the contract that we signed, but this was announced quietly after our last school committee meeting. Or a couple days afterwards, Monday or Tuesday of the following week, and that we're only one of 2 public schools that received this very competitive state pre-K award. And I wanted to congratulate, you know, Mrs. Denise Ahern, who's our director of early childhood. She put the grant together with some support from other staff, Ms. Mangiarelli. I'm sure there's many individuals involved with the preschool. But last year, we didn't get the pre-K. She put a lot of effort into it, and they gave us some good feedback. This year, that feedback was incorporated. And again, we're only one of 2 public schools that received this, and we received 2 classrooms. And the best part is it's such a resource to our families, because it's going to allow, there's another program, I believe it's Child Inc. in Coventry, that has classrooms. But it's going to allow additional 40 students that'll have a full day pre-K experience at no cost to them. And we're going to receive approximately $1 million over the course of 3 years to support this program. So I think and these are competitive grants. You know, we talk a lot about entitlement monies, Title I, IDA. We get amount of money allocated based on students, and we have to write how we're going to spend it. Over the last 2 years, we've received over $2 million in competitive grants. And I want to congratulate, you know, our community, our school community, because this is to supplement the work that we do. This isn't to replace, this supplements. And so this pre-K grant here is a significant, you know, we talked a lot about, you know, our pre-Ks used to be 3-star programs, and last year they all became 5-star programs, right? So that's as good as it gets in terms of quality. Now we can add these 2 programs that they're filled based on lottery. So again, I wanted to thank Denise, but really it's a huge benefit for our entire community. And so despite what's going on, there's still, we just talked about the celebrations. This is a huge success. You know, a few months ago, we talked about the curriculum funds that we received for ELA. Again, another competitive grant. We received over $500,000 for the elementary schools and for the pre-K. So again, I just wanted to make the community aware of this. This doesn't reduce any of our need that in terms of our ask from the town. I want to be clear about this. but this will provide resources to help with those full-day pre-K programs. They'll be run out of Washington Oak. And so, again, and I want to thank Mrs. Mandisi because she's the principal there, and she's, in terms of running the building and her leadership. So, again, working collaboratively with Ms. Ahern. This is a huge success for our community, especially for families moving in. You always hear me say, houses are going for sale in record prices in record time in Coventry. And it's not retirees that are moving into these houses, it's families. And so, families, it's important for them to know, especially families who are going to have young children, that the incredible early childhood, the incredible educational programs that despite this pandemic that we're putting forward. And again, it's just another reason why to move to Coventry for a family. So thank you for that, Denise, and congratulations to Coventry. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Levis. Mr. Florio, did you want to add anything, any comments?
I just want to say thank you, Miss Denise Ahern. Thank you for putting forward the grant, and thank you, Mrs. Mandisi, for supporting this program and administrating this program. And Mr. Levis, you're absolutely correct. This is for young families, and this will spark new development in our town and raise our home values. I just wish other political entities could see the benefit of this, and the benefit of an education, and the benefit of having good school system with fine students. And that's all I have to say, Madam Chair. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Florio.
You're welcome.
Mr. Murray.
It's going to be a little redundant, but I'm going to say it anyway because I think I should. I want to thank Ms. Maycomber. I know that it was probably, I'm just going to postulate here, but very difficult to plan a graduation for the students at Coventry High with moving targets all over the place in a state that was inconsistent. They locked in a plan, and I think that she took not just one scenario, but she implemented multiple, including a parade and the 4-day celebration and a video. Some schools selected just one or two of those. We kind of ran the gamut. So I want to thank all the administrators who spent a phenomenal amount of time. This is the stuff a lot of parents and a lot of our townspeople don't see when they talk about teachers and administrators in the district, is all the time that's spent beyond the hours taking care of these things that I think only parents can see when they go in and their child is affected. I know that I see it as a parent more than I even do as a school committee member when my son, like today, has special attention from somebody who calls in because he has emotional issues. So those things, while they're not appreciated probably by everybody in the community, are definitely appreciated by not only parents, but by us, by anyone who actually pays attention. So thank you for those efforts. Also do want to thank Ms. Ahern. I've worked with a lot of pre-Ks as part of my past life and job. 5 stars is a laudable goal, and I have a sense that was a big part of that grant application, that they achieved those 5 stars. It's extremely hard to get a 5-star rating on Bright Stars. They assess every minute detail, and so when you're going for these grants, I'm sure that had made a difference. And this is definitely, to bounce off what Dave said, value added for the community at a time when we're cutting recreational services, or prospectively cutting recreation, and we're cutting the value out of our community for our families. These are the things that as a young family, you're going to be looking for in a community, that they've invested in early education and that there's a future here. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Levis. Those houses that are going for $350,000, $400,000, $500,000 are likely not going necessarily to, in these new developments, to people in the older age bracket. It's just, that's not, where these things are going. So if we want to continue that value added to our community and the support to our community, we're going to have to continue to invest in this. And the last thing I'll say is the grants that you mentioned, $2 million. This is another thing that a lot of people don't understand. The time and energy it takes. It's very easy for an administrator to turn away from this because it typically is above and beyond the duties of their day-to-day to avoid these type of grants. To just kind of lay down and say, oh, we'll just throw an application in because the superintendent wants to put the time and energy in these to become a winner in a very competitive pool, especially in this state, is really tough. So I applaud them and everyone who's going for grants. And it assists us as a committee, right? Helps us tell the dialogue to the community of why, when we're asking for additional monies from the community, why they should invest in schools, because we're putting in forward the effort as a district to help ourselves. And I hope that continues. And I hope everyone in the administration, teachers, everybody continues that effort. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Mrs. Galunian?
I'll start off with the graduation because I was able to see a few of my friends posted their children graduating, and I'll tell you, it brought tears to my eyes. It was really something to look out and see where they put a picture of every graduate on the seats in front. It was just, it really was, it brought tears to my eyes. She did a phenomenal job. I wish they had a video of, you know, every child so you could actually watch it, you know, and watch it like a graduation.
They are putting the video together, Ms. Clooney, and it just takes,
well, that's great.
it took, you know, several minutes to,
Sure.
so they have to edit it down to, you know, a video that's probably 2.5 hours, because we've already done the speeches, even the honor table that the ROTC does, music. So Mr. Choppy, Josh, has to put this all together. But the goal is to have it out before the end of June, so yes.
Oh, good, good. So that'll be nice. And as far as the grants, as Mr. Murray says, it takes a lot to, you know, put together a grant, and then, you know, it's very competitive, and to be, you know, a winner of it is great. So I commend both of them. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Kalunian. And finally, Mr. Pearson?
I want to thank the superintendent for inviting, you know, the school committee to go to the graduation. I was able to spend about an hour. I was there for about an hour, you know, watching how the ceremony was handled, and the reaction of the students and their families. And, you know, under the circumstances, it was the best we can do. And I think it was very well received. So thank you to everyone involved for their hard work doing that. As far as the grant goes, good job. Keep it up. Thank you. The more free money we get, the better.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. And I just want to, I think the committee has spoken and just said how thankful they are. The high school graduation piece was truly amazing. My hat goes off to Brooke and her team, all the people, all the teachers. It'll be wonderful to see the actual video, but from all the pictures that were posted on Twitter, on Facebook, watching proud parents, grandparents, I'm really glad that at the end they were able to increase the amount of parents and loved ones that could actually be there. I don't think I heard a negative comment. All the seniors who, obviously it wasn't what they had imagined, but you know what? I think a lot of them were so pleased. They had their piece of glory being there and seeing their teachers and walking across the stage. So I, you know, like I think like Donna said, I had more tears just watching all the posts and teachers who went also, like during the senior award night video, you know, after that night, that virtual celebration, you know, the teachers all went to those individual students and dropped off gifts and their awards, and that was all over Twitter. It was all over the high school Twitter feed. It was just wonderful to see the love. Again, we go back to the love that teachers have for their students. the whole team at the administrative team at the high school were genuinely happy for their students to graduate, but you know, they just, their love and the love they showed each other into those kids was just amazing. It was very, very, very heartwarming. And finally, the grant, again, congratulations to Denise and her team. You know, you've done amazing work, Denise. Just, you know, like Mr. Murray said, the 5-star rating, that's all been work in this area that, you know, is so laudable. And, you know, you deserved it. You wrote a grant that, you know, beat out a bunch of other people. It was very competitive, and we're the lucky recipients of your hard work. So it's very, very much appreciated. And I'm looking forward to see how it all plays out as we start to spend the money. But
in our inner circle, I just want you to know, just between you and myself, Ms. Patton, I say it's really about the superintendent, though. So, don't share that with anybody, though. But I do want to add, and I've gotten several texts since here just from other people, but you know, we're focusing on the high school. I did mention some other things, but I got to tell you, every single school, I've been at the middle school every day with that grab and go, and they probably had, you know, I'm being facetious here, but probably 100 different events, because people keep getting lost going through the Falcon entrance circle. And so we're able to get our meal counts up because they're just looking for the other Rotary. But, you know, the middle school has done phenomenal. Every single elementary school, just so many different events. So it isn't just a one-off. They're ongoing. There's an event tomorrow, the last day of school, I believe, at
Black
Rock, but also at Western Coventry. So every single, and it's not just teachers. I know we use the term teachers. I'm talking about staff. You know, I mean, so many of our support staff are so involved, and we can't forget our SROs. They've been phenomenal. They were leading a parade today. I don't know where they were going. I don't know if they knew where they were going, but you see all these cars, police in the beginning, police in the end, tons of balloons flying off of cars. And so it's just been amazing, amazing. So again, you know, the high school is our flagship. They did a phenomenal job, but everybody has celebrated, you know, and as Mr. Murray can attest, his children at different levels. It's happening everywhere, and it's still happening. So, you know, there are districts where people have to sneak this stuff. I won't mention where, not West Warwick, but anyways, people have to sneak these type of events, you know, and it's just amazing. So I want to thank our entire school community again, and parents are a huge part of this. You know, just a huge part of supporting these initiatives. So thank you to everybody.
yeah, I concur, Mr. Levis, that, you know, it is a community of schools. And I'm on the listserv to Washington Oak, my neighborhood school, and on Alan Sean Feinstein Middle School. So I see all of the communications that go out to parents, and it's incredible. I'm always inspired by what I read and see. And the celebrations for the 5th graders going into 6th grade. I mean, it's just been amazing what everybody's done. And the middle school having to say goodbye to their, you know, 7th graders going into high school, you know, 8th graders going into the high school. It's been wonderful to watch, to see the love between students and teachers and staff. So again, thank you so much for that report. I don't know if there are any comments or from the community. I don't see any raised hands. Mr. Murphy, do you see anybody?
Nope, there's nothing.
Okay. Then I guess we can go to the citizens' comments. Again, if you would like to make a comment, you are more than welcome. I encourage anybody who's there listening to raise your hand, and we will acknowledge your hand and you can make a comment. Again, I don't see any comments. Mr. Murphy, do you see anybody?
Yep, there isn't anyone.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then we can go to number 14, which is scheduling the next meeting. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the next virtual meeting of the Coventry School Committee be scheduled for Thursday, June 25th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
I second the motion.
Could we have a roll call vote, please? Oop. I guess we can all
Okay,
just
sorry, here
raise
I am.
them.
Hey, Donna.
Dave Florio.
Yes, as long as there's no problems.
Yeah. Luke Murray.
Yes.
Donna Colunian.
Yes.
James Pearson.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn at, what time is it, Madam Chair?
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock.
8 p.m. I make a motion that meeting be adjourned at 8 p.m.
I second the motion.
And we probably can just say, hey, yay. Everybody ready to say yay?
Yay!
Yay.
Aye.
Yes. Okay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much for attending, all of the people listening from home. And we'll see you at the next virtual meeting. Again, thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you,
Bye, guys.
Madam Chair.
Bye.
Bye, Kathy.